Welcome. Thanks to everyone for being here. Due to the virtual format for today's meeting, I'd like to start by providing some guidelines. We have some participants attending by computer and others who may be attending by phone. For all meeting attendees, please speak clearly and pause frequently. State your name each time before speaking. Mute your microphone when not speaking. If you have technical issues, try joining the meeting using a different device. Use the call-in information in the meeting invite to call into the meeting. Because we will be taking action today, I'll be providing some additional guidance prior to the relevant portions of the agenda. First wanted to start off with attendance, which I believe we have 2 excused absences. Is that right, Gene?
That's correct.
And I believe Tom Anderson will be serving as a regular member because Nancy Davidson won't be able to attend. Great. Leah, why don't you take us through attendance, Gene? Thanks.
Sure. Danny Madden. Don McWilliams. Rishi Hazra, who I don't see has joined the meeting yet. Cameron Fisher.
Yeah.
Laura Labico.
Here.
Dan Hintz.
Here.
Ann Newcomb.
Here.
Jamie Finch.
Here.
Tom Anderson.
Here.
And I haven't seen Janet Wall join the meeting yet. Let me just verify. She's not in the attendee list. And then Nancy Davidson and Surya Balapragada are excused.
Great, thanks, Gene. And then the next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. Do I have any objections to approving them as stated? Hearing none, the minutes from the last meeting are approved, which brings us to public comment. Gene, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Yes.
All right, well, quick guidelines on public comment. Public comments are an important part of the public process. We take them seriously and factor them into decisions we make. For the members of the public joining us, welcome. If there is anyone in the meeting that would like to make public comments, please raise your virtual hand. To do this, if you're on the phone, press *3. If you've joined by computer or smartphone, look for the hand icon. This varies by device. One option may be to go to the participant panel and select your name, then choose raise hand. It may also be located under the reactions menu or more menu. When recognized, please unmute your microphone, state your name, address, and relationship to the city, speak clearly and pause frequently, and then mute your microphone when done. And we'd ask that you please keep your comments to 5 minutes as we do have a substantial agenda today. And Gene, if you want to pull in the first person.
Sure. Ann Fletcher, I'm going to make you a panelist. And you should be able to unmute and use video if you would choose to do so.
Can you hear me? Great, thank you. I'm Ann Fletcher. I live at 255 Southeast Andrews Street in Issaquah, and I'm a facilitator for the People for Climate Action Group. Happy to be here tonight again with environmental board members. I followed the development of the Climate Action Plan through its many iterations, and it is continually gets better and better. We're now at a point to determine if it's good enough for approval so we can get started on its implementation. For the most part, I think it is ready. I so appreciate the responsiveness that to the community input that has been coming from various sources, and it's evident in each new draft of the plan. The executive summary, which was lately added with the revised graphical version, as well as the icons and other graphics, make this plan much more user-friendly than it originally was. And the implementation section is very thorough with many progress checks to adjust actions to keep us on course. So these and many other revisions make it a strong plan with a good chance for success. I have 4 improvements that are significant enough to consider and would be easy to include in the final plan. The first one of these is in the building and energy goal. There is a target and a metric for clean energy transition for new buildings, but not for existing buildings. And I was wondering, do we have an aim there for the existing buildings? There is an energy efficiency goal for existing buildings, but not clean energy transition. Strategies 2 and 3 have many strong actions that would promote this transition in existing buildings. And it seems there should be a target or a way to measure how we're doing. Otherwise, we won't know how we're doing on this transition to clean energy in existing buildings. My second item is strengthening some of the wording of some of the actions. 1.2 about benchmarking, it talks about above a prescribed threshold, and that is makes a person wonder, is the door being left open for what buildings? Many buildings could be eliminated from that, or is there some better way to define that? And then the 1.3 and 3.1 use the word evaluate. That does not seem to be a sufficient verb for an action plan. In 1.3, evaluating building codes, that might occur as an initial step in a process, but actually strengthening them is the required action to get the desired impact. And similarly, in 3.1, what would be the result if we just evaluated community solar projects? The required action is to promote the best solar programs we can find. And the final wording is in 2.5, enact code to phase out fossil fuel infrastructure in new construction. And then here's the phrase, while considering possible exceptions. The final phrase is troubling. If exceptions have to be made later in the process for good reasons, it could be done at that time. Why are we predicting that happening now? On to number 3. I question the inclusion of the extensive emergency preparedness in this plan without a reference to how it is related to the rest of Issaquah's emergency plans. And maybe it is in there somewhere. I just couldn't find it. I think it's important to prepare for climate change impacts, and it should be part of a larger plan that might include other natural disasters such as earthquakes and etc. And the expense of providing for 100% of the residents should not be attributed to a climate plan alone. It should be shared across other departments such that it does not take resources away from the climate mitigation goals. And my last real simple suggestion is to put a clear divider between the sections of the plan with a space and a large title. And it would just need to align with the table of contents. It would help the reader know they're moving into the next section. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and good luck on your discussion tonight.
All right, and Gina, has anyone else indicated their desire to make a comment?
Yes, one more attendee. Looks like Connie Marsh, so I'll be moving her up so she can make her comments.
You're getting good at guessing. CM, he's going, I know who that is. Okay, my name's Connie Marsh. I live on Squawk, and I actually want to talk about the stormwater structure that you were provided with. So if you want to skip climate action in your brain for a moment. My comments for stormwater are concerns with how they've created their prioritization structure for the most part. I mainly agree with They're underpinnings, but some things I don't. So, for example, it says they want to use only existing policies as a base. So we are in this awkward position of we are updating our Title 18. We're going through climate action, and our policies are lagging behind. So we are creating all of these plans without updating the policies. So our new plans are immediately going to either be ahead or behind. And so in this situation, I didn't really see the gaps analysis, but for example, climate action does not have policies yet. So if you read the language in this stormwater manual, it would not be advancing all of those utilities to the climate action policies that you are working on creating and that we anticipate will be necessary to successfully negotiate our storm sewer, etc. So to me, that's an enormous miss for that. The prioritization seems to set up a conflict between efficiencies for utilities and natural area protection. For example, it says that we want to enhance from degraded areas and we want to protect, but it also says we want to be efficient. So for example, if you have a wetland that hadn't been maintained, it could potentially be a class 1 or category 1 wetland that would disallow a utility in its buffer. And so when you have to go making a decision as to whether you want to put a utility in the buffer of a critical area, and you're looking at these other things saying, well, we want to enhance and we want to protect, where do you actually fall on that? Do you fall on the side of efficiency for utilities, or do you fall on the side of the natural environment? And I actually don't see that they're providing themselves with any method of negotiating these questions. And then they talk about transparency to the public. Well, currently the public has no transparency into utility projects. You might have a neighborhood meeting now if it's impacting a critical area. And so when they talk about public transparency, I get no sense of what that could actually mean. And then the last thing that I think is missing is in our policies right now, we are actually not adhering to state law in several areas. And so they are not in our policies, for example, habitat protection. And so to set priorities that fly in the face of state law because our code does not adhere to state law seems to me a setup for failure. And for a large part of that, that's habitat protection. We basically have very little to protect our habitat and things like wildlife corridors. So I guess I feel like their prioritization needs a rework and a rethink. Thank you very much.
Connie. Jean, do we have anyone else signed up? Or raising their hand?
No one else has signed up or raised their hand, but there are a couple more members of the public who joined the call. So I guess this is a chance. Actually, it looks like a call-in user has raised their hand. So I will unmute the call-in user and they can make their comments. So the call-in user, you should be able to speak now. I can't see anything other than just your first 3 numbers are 300.
We cannot hear you if you're speaking.
Let me unmute myself. That might help. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
This is Steve Pereira, an Old Town resident for about 14 years. First of all, thank you all for serving on the Environment Board and trying to make Issaquah a better place. I appreciate your service. Secondly, I previously sent in some comments and I stand by those comments. Don't want to address that, though I'll hope those get considered. And the third one was two pieces of information I thought about more and I wanted to provide some additional input or reflection. The first, and I don't have the direct sections in front of me as far as the policies. The first was, I think, on Icap, and it had to do with the sections regarding incentives. And my two concerns, I guess, are both that I think we need to be more selective in targeting what it is we're going to try to incentivize to get the results. One of the things that I know I saw talked about incentivizing, for example, people getting a gas stove instead of a electric stove, and I don't know how much environmental improvement we get by having a gas stove instead of an electric, but the point is that we need to select something that gets a bigger bang for the environmental return from a limited number of tax dollars. I would just as soon see Issaquah spend those limited tax incentive dollars for things that have a better return. I also want to see a way of better understanding what the impact of and whether or not incentives actually end up getting some results that result in some environmental standback or feedback. I think the same thing though could be applied to electrical vehicle incentives. I think you need to look at more some market returns that look at things of standard or increasing the mileage for electrical vehicles and kind of standardization of the plug-in between the different models. Like, for example, you can't use a Tesla charger for a, let's say, a Maple or a Leaf vehicle. They're not interchangeable, so those need to be looked at first. My second issue had to do with, I think it has to do with stormwater issues, and it was just verbiage in the text that talked about Issaquah was going to start looking at doing more of the lowest cost improvements, just some text or verbiage that talked about using the lowest cost method. And I understand wanting to do the environmental or the lowest cost perspective, but I think you need to look at having policies to say these are the things we're going to try to do. I've heard or seen of places that do manufacturing that necessarily don't, for example, do as good of a job as recycling of the materials, cardboard boxes, and styrofoam as they could, because it's economically cheaper just to throw it away rather than to recycle the material. So just kind of remove some of that verbiage. That's my input. I appreciate your time, and again, appreciate your efforts, and thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else indicated a desire to speak, Gene?
No, that's everyone who's raised their hands.
Thank you, Gene. Then next up, we'll be moving on to our first agenda item discussion topic, where I believe Megan will be taking the wheel. But before we do that, Megan, I just wanted to, as you go through the presentation, how would you like to handle questions?
I think if it's a burning question on it, feel free to ask it during and I can answer. Otherwise, we can do questions at the end before we go into the discussion.
Great. Well, while Megan, why don't you pull up materials while she does that? I just wanted to provide some reminders on process. Jean provided a little bit of reminder in the email, but since it's been since the EV ordinance that we actually took action, just wanted to remind us all on how this process will work. So as Megan has taken us through the presentation, and any questions either during or after the presentation materials are done, the floor will be open for any motions relative to the plan that and what Megan has presented. If you have a motion, please indicate that in the chat. In addition to speaking them, please be prepared to provide any motions in writing. That just makes sure that it helps Gene know he's capturing exactly what you wanted, but also other board members be able to kind of take it. Before moving on, I just want to make sure, were there any questions on process that any board members had? All right, well, I think without further ado, Megan, you can take us away.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, board members. I'm Megan Curtis Murphy, and I'm now serving as a consultant to the city on Issaquah's Climate Action Plan. It's nice to be back with you all. And I would also like to thank this board and many others in the community. We now have a final version of the Icap for your review and discussion this evening. We've had a lot of meetings to get us here, and we're excited to be here. So our goals this evening are to provide an update on where we are in the Icap process. Quick hint, we're near the end now. I'll present our feedback we've received on the plan since the last environmental board meeting. We'll review some of the high-level updates and changes made to the Icap, and then the board will have an opportunity to discuss the plan and vote on a recommendation for City Council on the Icap adoption. We started this process back in the spring with a baseline analysis of where we were with existing plans and our GHG inventory and identifying regional efforts. We use this information to develop the framework of the plan, including the overall emissions reduction targets we want to reach and the strategies we want to use to get there. From there, we incorporate this framework into the draft plan that we're discussing tonight. Throughout this entire process, we've been engaging both city staff and community members through meetings and workshops, a survey that had nearly 300 responses, targeted focus groups, and other engagement efforts. The goals of this engagement is to ensure that we develop a plan that fits Issaquah specifically, that aligns with our community's priorities, and has the best chance of being supported by our community. We're all familiar with this slide, but here's a visual of the engagement done to date and where we are now, with this being the third meeting of the Environmental Board. So the next and final step will be the presentation for adoption of the plan to City Council in December. So we'll now spend a little bit of time discussing what we've heard from our most recent engagement efforts. So at the end of September, we discussed the plan with City Council, and they brought up several of the same points made at the Environmental Board meeting earlier that month. Similar to the board, they highlighted the need for a clearer vision and tie between the Icap components. They asked to clarify or revise some specific actions, targets, and focus area language. They wanted to highlight high priority actions for GHG reduction and to ensure frequent monitoring and evaluation of progress. Again, something that the board also discussed. They asked for some clarification around incentives and the city's role in that. They're eager to see a robust implementation plan with clear timelines, and they expressed some concern over implementation costs. In response to that feedback, we included a new Icap vision page, as well as new graphics and restructuring of the plan to enhance the connections. We changed the term cross-cutting to overarching at the community's request and refined the resiliency target. We clarified some action language and highlighted top GHG reduction actions. We now have a robust implementation plan that includes a plan for monitoring and evaluation. It also includes subsections on incentives and action-specific implementation considerations, as well as timing and funding. We then held our second community convening on climate to review the draft plan in October. At that meeting, we had a full group presentation on the draft plan and then went into breakout groups to discuss the different focus areas. At that meeting, the community asked for an approachable, relatable plan with strong graphics. They requested an executive summary to make it more digestible if a community member just wants a high-level overview. They wanted us to show urgency for acting on climate. They asked to have the role of the community clarified for implementing the plan and to ensure that targeted and accessible engagement continued following adoption of the plan. They helped identify stakeholders across focus areas and asked to prioritize collaboration. And we also heard some concerns over costs and feasibility for actions. So again, this engagement effort was very helpful in informing the final plan. We've now included new and more friendly graphics and removed more jargon based on the community feedback. We reformatted the Icap intro pages with an executive summary and easy reference report findings. We renamed the climate impacts page to clarify consequences of inaction to address the need for urgency. We developed a new section on resident-driven actions for each focus area as a way to guide residents on how they can help implement the plan. And we provided a lot more detail in the implementation considerations based off of what we heard in the meeting. Along with some of the updates we heard, I just want to share a bit more about the changes that we made to the plan. So by now you've had a chance to dive into it. This slide provides just a general overview of the new structure of the plan and how some of the pieces work together. We've already talked through this slide in earlier meetings, but I just wanted to provide the visual of how some of the new components work in the plan. So the first is the executive summary, and this includes the new Icap vision, which was requested through the community engagement process. We then have some background on the plan, information specific to Issaquah on the climate impacts and GHG reductions. And then it shows how the various components of the plan work together to reach our overarching emissions reduction goal. And the last section is also new and outlines the plan for implementing all these initiatives, which we'll discuss a bit more in a minute. Here's just a quick slide of the new vision graphic that's embedded within the executive summary. It pulls the targets directly from the plan, and it's meant to visually depict where we're headed and the type of community we want to live in. It's also a good example of some of the graphic enhancements made to the plan since the last meeting. So we reviewed several of the updates to the plan that were a direct response to previous engagement meetings. But I also just wanted to provide a quick overview of what some of those biggest changes are. So one new item is a letter from the mayor with her reflection on the plan and vision for continuing to work together with the community on the implementation of the plan. We added the executive summary and also the various graphics and photos to help lead the community through the plan. We updated some of the language, including changing the wording on how we would work with the school district to support their climate and sustainability education. And we also strengthened language on some of the other actions. We updated the climate resilience and well-being target. We rearranged sections of the plan to make it more reader-friendly, including a summary table of how the goals, strategies, and actions work together. One addition that came directly from the community was adding a section on what the public can do in each focus area. And we also wanted to show how the engagement directly showed up in the plan. And lastly, we now have the full implementation plan, which I'll turn to. So this provides, the implementation plan provides a detailed roadmap that will help staff and the environmental board ensure the plan is successfully implemented. It includes sections on oversight and accountability, including a detailed role for the environmental board, ongoing monitoring and evaluation, equity considerations for implementing the actions, key considerations on actions that have incentive programs, and then a detailed implementation matrix. The chart on this page shows the item and description for what's included in the matrix. The implementation considerations on the left and the partners on the right were deeply informed by the community convening that we had in October. Some other elements of implementation that Icap include are the emissions reduction potential, the affordability, and this is the estimated affordability of each action, with high being a positive indicator of an action being more affordable. Includes the implementation timeline for when we'll start implementing the action, and it includes a known funding sources, including city budgets and grants. We also have the lead department for who will be responsible for each given action. And just quickly to wrap up, as we all know, the next meeting will be with City Council on December 6th. Similar to when we worked through the electric vehicle policy, the board will be voting on a recommendation to council, and that will be provided with all of the materials for the council meeting. And then before we move into questions, the options before the board for this evening are to recommend the ICAP as presented, do not recommend the ICAP, or recommend the ICAP with changes, which would be discussed and voted on as amendments that Jamie was describing this evening. So again, I just want to thank the board for your input and engagement on the plan thus far, and I'm excited for the next steps for Issaquah in taking as we start to implement this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I think at this time, if you have any questions, please indicate them in the chat. Dawn, feel free to go ahead.
Hi, Megan. I was just looking through the plan here and I don't see where it talks about updates to the plan. Is there a recommendation in it of how often it gets updated or reevaluated? Maybe I missed it.
I believe we have that in the implementation section somewhere, but it's a 5-year plan. So we have that it would be updated in 2026. However, we also have the environmental board doing annual check-ins on it. So, you know, policies change, things come down the pipeline from the state. So there's definitely opportunities to, you know, review the actions, recommend some go sooner or later based on that. So the board will really have a big role in this each year looking at it. But overall, it's meant to be a 5-year plan.
Thank you.
Hi, Megan, this is Jamie. I had a question. The use of the term incentives, is that all, wherever it's used in this, in the ICAP, is that intended to be a financial, like economic benefit of some sort? Just wanted to clarify, because there are other forms of incentives. Is that assumed that that's what that term is used to mean?
Right. This is Megan. So we have a small section on incentives in the implementation plan to kind of clarify that a little bit, because I think this is something that came up with council as well. So incentives can be several different things. So it could be direct financial incentives from the city. It could also be, which would be monetary. It could also be in the form of fee reductions for things, or reduce parking requirements. So those are all different ways to save money, but not exactly, you know, handing out money. There's also a lot of grants available that could the city could apply for, and that could be a way to provide financial incentives. And then lastly, there's various partner incentives. So for example, Puget Sound Energy has some energy efficiency incentives. So some of them could be the city promoting partner incentives. So I would say there's a good variety. It could be the city doing money, but there's a lot of other options there too.
Thank you, Megan. One other question. I know there's mention of there being budget set aside for ICAP implementation in the 2022 city budget. Is everything that's being proposed in the implementation plan by and large covered with, is believed that they'll be covered by what's being set aside in the budget, or would it require additional funding for the city's portion of the actions that are in the implementation plan?
Mm-hmm. So this is Megan. The year one actions, there's a good variety, with some just being staff working on it in other departments, or staff working on it, you know, just overall staff capacity to do the work. There are some that do require money, such as the Community Climate Challenge to run that program. Another one is the electric heat pump campaign. And the funds that the city's setting aside does cover those actions that do require investment in 2022.
Great, thank you, Megan. All right, I am not seeing any other questions in the chat. So I think at this point now we can open the floor to any motions, and remember those are relative to the options that Megan provided on one of her last slides there. I will start us off then. And let me just paste this into the chat. I just put this into the chat, but the motion that I'm proposing is that we create a highly visible portion of the city's website dedicated to climate action to have the public access information on the plan, how they can get involved, and other recommended resources. And these materials are to be updated on a regular basis. All right, I don't have a second at this point, so okay, Rishi, do you have a second?
And this is Megan. I think before we start with the specific motions, I think we need to have one motion on the overall recommendation to start the discussion on it. And then we go into each of the various amendments that would be proposed. That's my understanding of it.
Thank you, Megan. So I believe that motion would need to be relative to those options that you presented on that last slide.
Correct.
Let me, I can draft something. Tom, you had a question?
Oh, well, it kind of ties in with
Was that related to my motion or
Megan's
to?
comments about your motion maybe being out of order. Okay, this is an action separate from the main thing on the table, which is what do we do with this climate action plan? So, same issue. I guess I have a related question though about just the overall timing, and we talked before about, well, when will this plan be updated? 5 years is a long time. That is somewhat concerning to me. Like I think there's merit in well, some of the things that commenters provided, the public commenters, like this comment about well, what about existing buildings? What are we going to do about that? How get them online here? I'm comfortable with moving forward with this plan, with it in mind that okay, well, this is a good place to start, and well, the process improvement mantra of plan, do, check, and replan sort of thing. But cycle time for that replan and update to this plan, it's got to be quicker than 5 years. So that's a little bit concerning, but I think that we should work towards a plan for existing buildings, but maybe we're not smart enough to do that right now. Let's get started with something that we can do, and we do know enough to move forward on, and then work on that next year or something. But I don't know. Express that. That's all.
All right, and I see your comment, and I do want to make sure we do keep any discussion. So if you have a question or comment or a motion, which one did you have? One of those? And
I agree. It'd be good to get going on the discussion, because I
Okay.
bet we have some amendments.
Okay, Don, you have a motion, I believe. You stated in chat. Do you want to go ahead?
Well, I think the plan is great overall, but what I'm hearing from the group is there's some minor changes that folks would like to make. So I'm making a motion that we recommend to move forward with the plan with some changes or minor changes to open the discussion so we can hear those.
All right, that motion has been seconded. And at risk, do we have unanimous, does anyone have any objections to this motion? Megan, do you want a formal vote on this motion? Or, okay, maybe we should do one. First, though, any comments that anyone would like to make on this motion?
I don't understand what's happening. Are we voting to talk about it? Are we voting? It seems like we should talk about it before we recommend anything.
Yeah, so that's, sorry for the confusion. At this point, yeah, if there's any comments on Don's motion, this would be the right time to make those comments.
So Laura, you look confused. My motion is simply to move forward with recommending the plan with the changes that we hear today so we can start that discussion.
Well, since no one else is piping up, I'm guessing I'm not the only one wondering why we can't just start. Can we just recommend to discuss it first? If it's been seconded, I will go along.
Well, so what we have to do to open up like more specific recommended changes, we would need to approve this motion. So I'm not hearing any, oh, do see a question from Anne. Anne.
That's for once we start the discussion, sorry.
Okay, well then, Jean, do you mind taking us through a vote on Don's motion?
Sure. I'll call the roll and basically if you could just confirm yay or nay when your name is called. So Danny Madden.
Yay.
Don McWilliams.
Yay.
Rishi Hazra.
Yay.
Cameron Fisher.
Yay.
Laura Labico.
Nay.
Dan Hintz.
Yay.
Ann Newcomb.
Yay.
Jamie Finch.
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
So the motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, Jean, and sorry everyone for the confusion. At this point now that Don's motion has been accepted, if there's any further motions related to recommended changes, please indicate that in the chat. And then, Anne, did you have a question before we went any further?
Yeah, I remember last time we did this, we had questions first. And my question would be to Megan. And Anne Fletcher brought it up as well. So in Buildings and Energy 2.5, it says enact code to phase out fossil fuel infrastructure in new construction while considering possible exceptions. Do you know what those, can you define some of those possible exceptions? What are you guys thinking about there?
This is Megan. I think at this time, there's no specific exceptions that would be on the table or not on the table. This is an action that we heard a lot about in the community engagement process. We heard a lot of support for it. We also heard some concerns from it as well. There's been other jurisdictions that have passed all electric type of codes with some exceptions. For example, there's been exceptions for cooking stoves or gas fireplaces. So that's not to say any of those are specifically on the table or not on the table. It would be this action is to bring this policy forward and then go through the engagement process and with the community and council again to see what the right policy is. So that's why we have the word possible exceptions in that. Yes.
Can I give a thought on that? I did attend a commerce meeting where this was discussed, and it was the reason everybody loves their gas stoves, and so taking those away wouldn't make sense. It would make a lot of people really upset. So they were going for the easier things like water heaters and heaters. But in new construction, you'd have to add the pipes in, and there are less incentives to, they're reducing the incentives right now to put those pipes in. So maybe it would be less desirable because people are having to pay more for them now. But I guess I'm just confused on how it would work if you have to put the infrastructure in for just a stove. I guess we're still working that out as a state.
Yeah, I think that that's something that would be discussed as we bring that policy forward and start to hash out the details of it.
Thank you. Cameron, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, this is Cameron Fisher. Question for Megan. Going to Tom's comment there earlier about the 5-year review process and how the environmental board allows to comment on an annual basis. Can you kind of talk about how you came to that roadmap of review timeline and what the annual review from environmental board standpoint would entail?
Sure, this is Megan. So overall, we want it to be five years. We wanted it to be actionable and make sure we can do all of those things in the timeline set for the plan. 10 years thing could start to change a bit more, so we landed on 5 years for that. But things also can change every year, or budgets can change, various policies can change. So we wanted the environmental board to have that opportunity to be looking at it more often and overall talking and prioritizing actions. That's something that's actually in the duties and responsibilities of the environmental board overall, to be providing input to the city on climate programs, policies. So it's kind of taken from that and embedded into this process. One way I think it could go forward is that each year, also from the environmental board ordinance, there'll be an annual report that goes to city council from the board, and that will report on some of the metrics and the work that the board has done. So I think that might be one way, that there could be a discussion prior to that, and that could be one way to start to talk about how to change those pieces and maybe present those options for changes in the annual report. But I think that will also have to be something that's hashed out a little bit in that first year with the new sustainability manager to kind of see what that best process is to do it. But there will be that annual check-in, just to go through the implementation plan, make sure we're on the right track, and figure out if there's any changes needed.
All right, Don, you got a question?
Yeah, question for you, Megan. Hearing the comments earlier about the nexus of the emergency management side of this to the city's comprehensive emergency management plan, does that already exist, or is this standalone to that plan? If so, let's consider combining them a bit.
Yes, this is Megan. So the city does have an emergency management plan. We also have a new emergency manager on board. So they are looking at updating all the various plans that the city has. And so I was able to meet with that person and start to talk about what some of the goals for the city would be in terms of emergency management, and they're starting to develop that. So this is one that has come out of those conversations and is something he wants to work towards for the city. So it's not just a goal for the climate action plan, but it's really one of those more citywide ones, but it really relates to a lot of the the adaptation pieces that we're looking at and how to be more resilient and the need for that with various climate impacts coming down the pipeline. So it is kind of an overarching citywide piece, but there are climate pieces to it, and it will start to be embedded in other city plans and documents going forward.
Thank you, Megan. Rishi?
This is Rishi speaking. I had a question about, it says in the plan that the next review is scheduled for 2026. And I was wondering like whether it's possible that when we give our like annual reports to City Council, is it possible for them to change the plan, or does it need to be 2026 for them to start amending it?
This is Megan. I think it's a living document. Especially the implementation plan. So we decided to put that in the appendix, as I think that's the piece that would probably be the most likely to change. So for example, in that we have when actions would start, if it's kind of the short, medium, or longer term. There might be some longer term actions that an opportunity, a funding opportunity, a policy opportunity could open up. And so we want to move those forward. Or vice versa. There might be something that ends up being, more burdensome or not as much emission potential as we thought, and we want to push that later in the plan. So I think that implementation plan is really the piece that is the most living document. And I think with the new sustainability manager and the environmental board, they can talk about the best way if we want to, edit that document annually, since it is an appendix, or just recommend changes on it. I think that there's various ways that can be done.
Thank you, Megan. Laura, you had a question?
Yeah, this is Laura. So Megan, I think you kind of touched on it, but can you clarify, and then I have a follow-up. Can you clarify for implementation? So it looks like, is the sustainability manager sort of handling how it's going to implement and like what the actual next steps are specifically, or is that also on the mayor and city council?
So the climate action plan is a citywide plan. So there's, as you'll see in the implementation plan, there's a lot of different departments involved: Parks Department, Public Works. The Office of Sustainability is the project manager on it, is making sure that each of those pieces get done and kind of being the overall coordinator for the work. But that works across with the mayor and the mayor's priorities, the city administration, budget. So it really is a citywide piece. And then some of the pieces that we brought into it most recently with some tips for what residents can do is we also wanted it to be a plan for the community as well. So they're able to look through it and find ways that they can take action as well.
So I guess my follow-up comment as an aside, I think it's amazing. Like, it's really exciting to see this being fleshed out. Going back to feedback I offered earlier in the year, I still think, I know we're getting there, but the dashboard, I think it's still very abstract, and it has this risk of being punitive and not visionary. So I'm excited to see that build out, but I think it's important because it's so abstract that there's a risk that of like who owns everything, like literally putting faces and names to ownership and in a dashboard way, so people can actually see, is this a residential thing? Is this a commercial property owner thing, or who different initiatives fall under and what the responsibility is, but also giving a vision. Like, it's all words. So when we read it, there's not much that grounds you in that this is important for the future in a way that's maybe it feels like belt tightening without any sort of like, this is going to be great for everyone thing. And I'm not saying make a positive spin, but I think it's important for us to like have an actual literal vision of what some of those things would look like. So what will it look like when emissions go down? Like, what would the streets look like when there are no streets? So as we move forward in implementation, I think that would be really helpful for, because there's such a diverse community of people involved, but that's helpful for knowing who's going to be managing it. So thank you.
Any other questions from the board? All right, well, now for the second time, we'll open up for any motions related to recommended changes. Rishi, go ahead.
Yeah, Rishi speaking. I motion to recommend the review of the climate action plan to be every 3 years, with the next first review scheduled for 2024.
So right now it's 2025, is it? When is the next review? Is it every 2 years? Or every
I believe it's
6 years?
2026. But Don, did you have a
2026.
comment?
Okay.
Or is it a question or a?
I had a comment to Rishi's motion.
Well, to have discussion of the motion, we would need to have a second. That's I think the process.
Okay, well, I second Rishi's motion then.
Okay.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, I think so. And now you can comment.
Okay. My concern is, while I understand the need for the anticipated schedule at 2024, and world with a ton of resources, that would be great, but I question whether or not that's a realistic goal to revise this every 3 years in a city like Issaquah. So I look to city staff to kind of let us know if that's doable.
Rishi, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think I agree in part with that. Perhaps it's not necessary to review it every 3 years, but I think our first scheduled review should be 2024. I think, especially upon implementing a new plan, it's important to check in on it fairly quickly. Otherwise, it's easy to see that kind of dissolve and not really come into implementation. So I think 2024 sets a nice starting point. So I don't know if that would alleviate your concern, Don.
My concern's more towards the Issaquah staff, so looking to them to answer that question.
We have a few more comments, Rishi. I do think if that was to be what you would want to update your motion, you would need to propose an amendment to your motion. So it looks like we have a couple other comments, but I think that would be, in terms of process, what would need to happen if you wanted to update to not every 3 years, but the review scheduled for 2024. So
Should I send in a message with an updated motion or amend
it?
It
would need to be an amendment. So yeah, you have to propose an amendment, and then we would need to discuss that amendment and vote on that amendment, and then would come back to comments on your original motion.
Okay, well, I move to amend it to say that the review of the climate action plan will occur in 2024.
Okay, great. Could you put that into the chat? And while you're doing that, if anyone has any questions or comments related to that amendment, we can then come back to, there's Tom, Laura, and Anne, I see you have comments. If you have comments relative to the amendment, please put in a new comment just to make sure that that wasn't related to the original one. And then Anne, I think you have a question. Was that for the original one? Sorry, I'm having sequencing problems.
Yeah, it might be just be part of the discussion, actually. So,
Tom, I think looks like you have a question or a comment.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not sure what so yeah, I want to speak in favor of Rishi's motion, 2024. And this is a plan like nothing we planned before. So waiting 5 years to revise and update a plan that's kind of groundbreaking, it just seems way too long. 3 years even seems too long, but I think three years is reasonable. and I'm in support of that. I mean, this isn't a plan for how we're going to pave the streets or something. You know, a process that has been done for decade after decade after decade. This is something new, and you've got to iterate on new things because we won't get it all right, and we'll find more things that need to be tweaked in it. And yeah, no more than 3 years for sure is my feeling on it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Gene, I might just ask if you have the necessary clarity on the amendment that you need from Rishi. From his comment he just made.
Yes, my understanding is essentially review the plan in 2024.
Okay. Any other comments specific to Rishi's amendment to review in 2024, not every 3 years? Anne, you had a question?
Yeah, so would it be just the environmental board that is reviewing it, Rishi, or would it be the whole city again? I was just thinking that because a lot of us won't be on the environmental board anymore.
Yeah, I believe the 2024 review date would be for city council.
Oh, just for city council? Okay, and then we could comment to the city council. That makes sense. Should it also be for the environmental board and potentially the entire public?
Well,
Or-
Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I was under the impression that the environmental board would be reviewing it every year, but like it would officially be reviewed by city council in 2024. I'm not sure if that's exactly correct though.
This is Megan. That is the way we're intending it. So it would be reviewed, you know, the public process, city council in 2026, but the environmental board would have the opportunity to review it annually. The board is open to the public, so there's always opportunity for public comment and public to get involved in that way as well.
That's right. I forgot we were gonna, I knew we were overseeing it, but yeah, every year. Do you still think in light of us reviewing it with the environmental board every year that the city council needs to review it into 2024?
Is that directed to me? Yeah, I do think it's important to bring it up to city council, at least in 2024 through official public process.
Oh, makes sense.
All right, you had a question or a comment, sorry.
Yeah, I think maybe we should just scale it back to say option to review, because if it's a living, breathing document, it will constantly be updated, and it could just be this big bureaucratic headache. I don't like the idea of like putting any consultant costs or other, you know, bureaucratic updates on a living document anyway. I agree we need to be reviewing it every year, but putting it out to city council and everything, in addition to other recommendations, could just become a big nightmare. So having done these types of things before, it could explode into being like a lot of paperwork, which would be the opposite of progress.
Thank you, Laura. I do want to make sure, is that a comment, or are you proposing an amendment to Rishi's amendment that it would be suggest a review in 2024?
I guess I would propose it, but I'd rather hear from Megan or Jean first before on their thoughts.
Okay.
This is Megan. Sorry, can you clarify the question there?
What are your thoughts on the process of reviewing 3 years versus 5 years from a administrative standpoint?
This is Megan. The overall administration recommendation is the 5 years, so that's the way we wrote the plan, thinking that, you know, developing it does take a lot of staff capacity and time in order to do that. And so, but understanding that things change, that's why we built in that annual review by the environmental board. So overall, the recommendation is to keep it at that 5 years. But you know, if the board wants it to be 2024, then we can also look at that as well.
Tom, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess I don't, this is Tom Anderson speaking. I don't understand what sort of change would be allowed on the yearly review that wouldn't require a review by the council. How does that work?
This is Megan. I think the way I was envisioning that annual review is kind of more looking at the action level. So the goals, targets, and strategies are being updated with the comprehensive plan this year. So those are going to be going into that comprehensive plan. So I wouldn't recommend annual reviews of those. That would take going through the whole comprehensive plan process as well. So I do see it more in that action implementation phase. I think that there's also going to be opportunities for the board to weigh in on programs and policies along the way. So the board will be able to kind of prioritize what should go forward and not, but also be able to talk about the actions themselves. So I think there is a lot of opportunity for input there.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment? All right, I do want to just make sure everyone a reminder that supporting an amendment doesn't necessarily mean you support the end result of the amended original motion. So just keep that in mind. So Jean, can you, I'm not seeing any other comments or questions. Could you take us through a vote on the amendment to recommend only a next review in 2024?
Sure. So on the amendment that Jamie just stated, I'll take the roll call vote. Danny Madden?
Nay.
I'm sorry, could you just say that again?
Nay.
Thank you. Don McWilliams?
Yay. Yes.
Rishi Hazra?
Yes.
Cameron Fisher?
Nay.
Laura Labico?
No.
Dan Hintz?
Nay.
Ann Newcomb?
Yay.
Jamie Finch?
Yay.
Tom Anderson?
Yay.
And the amendment passes 5-4.
Thank you, Jean. And so I believe now we're back to discussing this as an overall motion, where the motion is to recommend a review in 2024. Is that correct, Jean? Any further comments now that that amendment has been added to the overall motion?
So just so I'm straight on this, the motion is that we will do a first review in 2024 and then it's a 5-year period after that.
I believe so, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any comments or questions. So Jean, could you take us through a vote on the motion?
Yes. Danny Madden?
Yay.
Don McWilliams?
Yay.
Rishi Hazra?
Yay.
Cameron Fisher?
Nay.
Laura Labico?
Nay.
Dan Hintz?
Nay.
Ann Newcomb?
Yay.
Jamie Finch?
Nay.
Tom Anderson?
Yay.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Jean. now we are back to having the floor open for any other motions for recommended changes.
So now is when we give you our amendments.
Yes, so this would be a motion. You would make a motion
For an amendment.
for a recommended change to the climate action plan.
And if we have a list of tiny little things, should we do it all at once or just one thing at a time? Just like word changes.
Well, that's to a certain extent up to you. I don't know if Megan or Jean have any comments on that, but I think it's probably best done as individual, if they're distinct individual motions.
This is Megan. I think that that's probably how it would need to be on each word.
I will, I have a motion, the one that I jumped the starting gun on a little bit earlier. My motion is that I move that an action is added that we create a highly visible portion of the city's website dedicated to climate action to help the public access information on the plan, how they can get involved, and other recommended resources. These materials are to be updated on a regular basis. And I have a second from Laura. So now comments related to this motion can be made. Rishi, you have a comment?
Yes, this is Rishi speaking. I like the idea, and I think we should be doing this, but I think we should place like a date on which the city should have it done by, or at least, you know, like publicly accessible when it's actually like, you know, published on the website.
This is Jamie speaking. Just to add a little bit of color on why I made this motion, I feel like that is really important that the public doesn't have to search across different parts of the city's website to find resources and information on how they can get involved and how to learn about the action plan. So I have a feeling this might be something that the city would do anyways, but I do think it's really important that we dictate that there's going to be a section that's very visible and easy for the public to access related to resources on the climate action plan and how they can get involved. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Okay. Jean, could you take us through a vote on this motion?
Annie Madden,
Yay.
Don McWilliams,
Yay.
Rishi Hazra,
Yay.
Cameron Fisher,
Yay.
Lara Labico,
Yay.
Dan Hintz,
Yay.
Ann Newcomb,
Yay.
Jamie Finch,
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Jean. Anne, I see that you moved to make an amendment. I just want to make sure that, are you making an amendment, like a motion to amend the climate action plan? Is that correct? Or are you moving
Yeah,
to make
just
an
so-
amendment to the motion that just passed?
Oh, sorry, the climate action plan.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
I move that on page 52, partnerships, we add King County Forestry Program and Water and Land Resources Division. And if you want to know some of my reasoning is because it's my experience that the King County Forestry Program is the most knowledgeable at this present time about how to create healthy forests, and they've got pilot projects on climate resistant forests. They've got a lot of science-based stuff that they're working on. They have scientists on their team. And I think they would be a really good resource that the city of Issaquah would benefit from collaborating with. And they weren't on any of the partnerships. And then as far as the land and resource divisions, the way I saw it, the forestry program is part of the land and resource divisions, and it looked like the land and resource divisions had a lot of good resources as well that the city of Issaquah could partner up with. And it's also my experience that King County loves to partner, and they're really accessible. So we could take advantage of that free resource.
Thank you, Anne. I'm not seeing a second. Rishi has requested a written motion. Do we have anyone to second Anne's motion? If not, we'll need to move on to the next or reopen the floor. Not seeing a second, I think we will need to move on and open the floor for any additional motions. This is Jamie. I move that we add to the other feedback. So just to be clear, there's recommended action and then there's other feedback that's not specific to recommended changes. And I would move that in that other feedback section, that actions specific to increasing tree canopy in the Icap and the draft Title 18 update seem insufficient to achieve the desired 55% tree canopy goal.
Is there a specific page you're referencing, Jamie?
This is overarching, but this would be added to when we provide our recommendation to council, there's the recommended changes as well as other feedback that the board is providing. So I can provide more comment, but I don't want to go too far on why I think that's necessary, but all right, well, I'm not seeing a second on that, so I think we can reopen the floor to any other motions. Ann, you had a motion? Go ahead and make your motion.
Okay, I move to amend in the buildings and energy section, page 31, 1.3, change the word evaluate to strengthen. So it would read, partner with regional collaborations to evaluate, rather than that evaluate, we would put strengthen, to strengthen. Evaluate strengthening city energy. Wait a minute, I might have put the wrong one in there. Evaluate strengthening. To promote, that would be promote. Partner with regional collaborations to promote strengthening city energy efficiency codes to reflect best practices and meet established targets.
It might be helpful to see that in context.
Okay, let me see if I can copy it. Let me look again, let's see. 1.1. Okay, so this is there you go. So where it says promote, that is currently evaluate.
This is Megan. I was trying to help by putting it up on the screen. Did you say it was page 31?
Yep, page 31, 1.3. It's something that Ann Fletcher suggested too. So partner with regional collaborations to promote strengthening city energy efficiency codes to reflect best practices and meet established targets. And Megan, I don't know if it's appropriate for you to say why evaluate was the word chosen. Maybe you know.
This is Megan. Are we into the discussion for it? I'm not sure.
We do have a second from Dan, so yes, we are.
Great. 1 second here. This is Megan. Looking at it now, I think it's just that the overall energy codes out there, I think we've heard that Washington has very strong energy codes. So I think the overall thought was that we would evaluate what those are in order to decide whether or not to add them in.
Thank you, Megan. Any other comments or questions related to Ann's motion? Don, you have a question?
Yeah, I just question the overall strategy of this group wordsmithing a document like this. These are strategies. These are not policies. They're not ordinances. They're not things that are going to go into law, or they're concepts. So I mean, we can go through this and wordsmith all we want, but my understanding is this is a dynamic document. We'll get a chance to critique it annually. So I don't know if, I guess the question more for process, is this the right way to do this? Or is it just simply providing Megan with comments saying, I recommend you change this word to that word and whatnot?
It's a good question. It'd be easier just to send it to Megan.
Megan or Jean, do you have any input on that?
This is Megan. Um, I think we wouldn't want to go through and wordsmith the entire thing. I think if there are kind of key word changes, I might call this a key word change. And I think we did hear in some of the previous meetings, there was a desire to strengthen some of the language in this. I see this as being an example of that. I don't think we'd want to go through for tons of actions to do it, but there might be a couple key actions where the board feels really strongly about something. And this could be one of those examples. That's my overall thought. So again, this would be what is going to council for their consideration, as well as what the city may or may not change kind of in that time. So based off of what we're hearing today, we might go ahead and make some changes and then let council know we made them based on the environmental board input. So I would leave it up to you guys, I think, to balance the exact level of detail, but there might be a few keyword changes that the board would want.
Thank you, Megan. I do think Jean may be having some connection issues. Like you can't join as a panelist from the phone. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Jean, are you able to take a vote from the phone, or is that something we should have Megan do?
I don't think he is going to be, well, I saw him unmute. Let's see. Jean, can we hear you?
I'm trying to talk. Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can.
So yes, I can take a vote. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to actually hear the conversation about the motion. So I might just need somebody to point me towards the current motion being considered.
The current motion being considered is, well, and partner with, it's amending a certain section of the building and energy. Do you want to go back to your original motion where it was trying to figure out the easiest way to get this into a motion form? I believe it's to update the sentence that she's indicated, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's to change the word promote or evaluate to promote. Is that the change?
So I think what is better than that is what I just put in the chat. Just take out promote and evaluate and just have the word strengthen. Strengthening was already there. So it'd be partner with regional collaborations to strengthen city energy efficiency codes to reflect best practices and meet established targets.
Okay, so this would be an amendment to your original motion. So I do think we would need to go through that process again and see if anyone seconded that that motion when we have a second from Don McWilliams. So comments and questions related to Anne's amendment to her motion. Not seeing any, so Jean, can you take us through a vote on this amendment to Ann's motion?
Yes. So roll call vote for this amendment, starting with Danny Madden.
Yay.
Dom McWilliams.
Yay.
Rishi Hazra.
Yay.
Cameron Fisher.
Yay.
Laura Labico.
Yay.
Dan Hintz.
Yay.
Ann Newcomb.
Yay.
Jamie Finch.
Yay.
And Tom Anderson.
Yay.
The amendment passes 9-0.
Thank you, Jean. And so now we're back to the original motion, which has now been amended with Ann's language here that was just passed in the amendment. Any additional discussion, comments, or questions related to that? How is the motion? Not seeing any. Jean, could you take us through a vote on this motion?
Sure. Starting with Danny Madden.
Yay.
Dom McWilliams.
So what is the motion? Are we motioning to recommend moving forward with this with the amended changes? Then yay.
And yes, Don, so basically it was the amended language that was just agreed upon would be kind of substituted into the original motion. So next up will be Rishi Hazra.
Yay.
Cameron Fisher.
Yay.
Laura Labico.
Yay.
Dan Hintz.
Yay.
Ann Newcomb.
Yay.
Jamie Finch.
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Jean. And the floor is back open for any other motions.
Jamie, it looks like Laura put something in there.
Thank you, Don. Sorry to see that. Laura, you have a motion?
Yeah, I just want to make a motion for other feedback because I think it's important to make this actionable. And so I just want to motion that we recommend prioritizing creating with the website a simple climate dashboard to clearly express current climate status and our targets. So just something to express where we are against our major targets. I think it's important to make it quantifiable. Otherwise, the website could go on and just be too much information.
Thank you, Laura. And we do have a second. So if there's comments or questions related to the motion, indicate in the chat. Danny, you have a comment?
Yeah, like I think like having a place on the website where all of this information is accessible is super important. I know we agreed on that earlier. I was just wondering from like a staff level, as far as like developing this web page and like figuring out what kind of content and resources would be on it specifically, like what the process would kind of look for that, or if the environmental board would be able to give some guidance or recommendations as far as like what resources are put on that dashboard, or like how we would like decide what to put on there basically.
This is Megan. Is that a question for me?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, so I think this sounds a little similar to what Jamie was recommending, I think, in having kind of a place where it's publicly accessible information. This is specifically asking for kind of the updates on status and targets. I guess I see this happening maybe in two ways. So we have that annual report that would be going to City Council, and that would be kind of providing an update on the plan and the status of where we are. So I could see that being rolled into an update that then could live on that website, or having that report live there. I think that's one way. I think if the board was interested in having a kind of a more dynamic graphic visual type of dashboard. I think that there's a lot of services out there. I've seen some companies that offer that sort of thing. So that might be more of a budget request piece. So that could be something that's discussed with the new sustainability manager and could be put into asked to be put into a budget. So I think there's kind of different levels of effort there. So I think that could be a future conversation of exactly which way to go.
Don, you had a comment?
I guess it's more of a clarification from Laura. You mentioned the term dashboard. When I hear dashboard, that means to me that it's a something like a Power BI program where it's collecting data and pushing it up on a real-time basis. Are you looking for just more of like an annual update?
I would say something in between. I don't think it's necessary to have live data. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous because we all know like you can't quantify all of that so quickly, but it needs to be dynamic. So yeah, I don't think it can be updated as it goes, but at least something that's I'm more interested in, yeah, just saying like, because if you look right now, we have data from a long time ago and it's buried deep in the website. And if the world is literally burning, I think it's important that it's easy to see this on the front page. If we're serious about it, we need to make it on, an easy little dashboard that says like, our goals are, these 10 things, here's what they are, just something simple. Yeah, I mean, we can get into it later, but yeah, not like a super dynamic fancy thing at this point, just something that communicates our goals.
All right, thank you.
Reese, do you have a comment?
Sorry, this is Rishi speaking. I was wondering whether we could, and I'm asking Laura, if you could make like a friendly amendment to the motion so that it includes what you just said, which is like in part of the other feedback to say like, okay, these are our goals. And then we want to show where we're at right now. Maybe just to clarify that in the motion itself.
Yeah, and to be clear, we would need to go through the amendment process. If Rishi, are you proposing an amendment to Laura's?
I could, but I'm wondering whether we could do it through a friendly amendment instead.
Unfortunately, we can't. It has to go through the same process that we've been using.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I'll make an amendment to the motion.
And could we, either you or Laura, provide the specific language that you would like with this amendment?
Actually then, Laura, if you'd like to take that amendment and you can make that amendment, I think that'd be best. Otherwise, I don't think I'll make the amendment.
Yeah, I'm looking at the words and I'm not sure what I would change enough to express it. I can look at it for a second, but.
Any other comments or questions on Laura's motion? All right, Jean, could you take us through a vote?
Yes, starting with Danny Madden.
Yay.
Don McWilliams.
Yay.
Rishi Hazra,
Yay.
Cameron Fisher,
Yay.
Lara Lapico,
Yay.
Dan Hintz,
Yay.
Ann Newcomb,
Yay.
Jamie Finch,
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Gene. The floor is back open for any additional motions. And you have a motion?
Yeah, so it's another changing the word evaluate. So right now it reads evaluate community solar projects, and I would like to change it to promote community solar projects, including partnership opportunities such as with Puget Sound Energy.
We have a second for that motion.
And it is under buildings and energy on page 32.
All right, I am not seeing a second, so I think we may need to move it on and reopen the floor. So yeah, we'll move on if any additional motions. This is Jamie. I move that we recommend the Icap, maybe I should spell that out. But I move that we recommend the Icap plan with the recommended changes. And it looks like we have a second. So if there's comments or questions related to this motion, please indicate in the chat.
Can we add, I mean, I have one more thing I wanted to add, but if we're out of time, I was going to add another amendment.
Yeah, and if you would like to make an amendment, you can please indicate that. Please include in the chat.
So I probably have to
Thank
go to the page for the exact wording, but in natural systems and water resources 1.1 to 1.3, I would like to suggest that we add King County Forest. So there's partners at the end, people who we would collaborate with. And I would like to add King County Forestry Program collaboration on forest health, climate change resilience, and carbon sequestration.
Thank you, Anne. Is there a second for Anne's amendment?
Or if there's no seconds on that, I could take out all the verbiage there and just have add King County Forestry Program. Hang on. So 1.1 to 1.3 in the partners section, it would be more powerful if we had more partners and especially partners that are so wise and full of information and have done a lot of studying and that are easy to collaborate with. And so another really good partner would be the King County Forestry Program because it's the natural systems and water resources. So what we're talking about in there is forests, forest health and forest tree canopy and carbon sequestration. So it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have any seconds for this updated amendment?
Can we have a discussion on it? I'm just curious as to why people are hesitant to add the King County Forest Program.
We do have a second. It looks like we have Don. Do you want to? You had a clarification that you're hoping to make.
Yeah, I think Ann, I think the group you're talking about is the Water, Land, and Resource Division of King County. Is that correct? If we're going to add this, we need to get the name correct.
Well, they are under the King County Forestry Program is under the Water, the Land and Water Program.
It's the Water, Land, and Resource Division is what it's called.
Yeah, and under that, there's the Forestry Program to be specific. They are the ones that we collaborate with now through the Issaquah Alps Trails Club, and it would be really easy for us to collaborate with. But if you want to use the larger one, that works great too, because there's a lot of people to collaborate with if we use the larger one.
I would rather see it read the Water, Land, and Resource Division because they deal with more than forestry. They deal with stormwater and flooding and all sorts of other stuff.
Okay, sounds good.
So Don, would you like to make an amendment to Ann's amendment? If so, could you, well, first of all, say yes and then provide that in an updated comment?
Yeah, let me copy and paste it and change the language here.
Thank you.
Oh, this is Tom Anderson. While he's doing that, I'll just comment on Ann's question about, well, why aren't you people talking up? It's, I think
Tom, we actually should really wait until we.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You should wait until we get this in there. Sorry. You can definitely indicate in the chat once that is, but just want to get Don's updated amendment in first. Thank you, Don. Anything to add beyond just what you've written there? No. Okay. Do we have a second for Don's amendment to Ann's amendment? We have a second from Rishi. So any comments or questions? I'm happy, Tom, if you want to, well, it looks like I want to first go up to Danny. You had a question, sorry, Rishi, you were actually the first to have a question about the original amendment. Is that still a active question?
Yeah, my question was, we're saying that we're going to amend it to include this as a partner case, the King County Forestry Program, but I'm wondering, like, does that not require previous communication with that department? Or is this like a recommendation that the city partners with that forestry program? I'm a little confused.
This is Megan. I can try to answer that. So overall, the partner section in the implementation plan is various groups that we could partner with when we implement the action. So some we may have talked to already. Some it might be as we're starting to develop what that program or policy is going to look like. We'll start to talk to them then. I think we're really open to lots of partnerships. And maybe not always the more the merrier, but you know, I think when there's resources out there, we like to use them. We like to talk with different organizations, and we do that. The partners that are in there now aren't going to be the only ones that we're going to talk to. There might be new ones that come down the line. So it's more of I think a guideline to help as we start to implement. So I think having one or there or not there doesn't say that we, you know, we're definitely going to work with them or not work with them. I think it's really kind of start to be that guideline. And this is one of those places where, as we start to look at the plan annually and look at the implementation plan, I think this would be a great place where board members can bring in resources and say, we're going to look at this action to do next year. I think we should start. I see a couple partners there. I think we can start to partner with others. Sorry, that's kind of a long-winded response, but we're definitely open to various partnerships.
Thank you, Megan. Danny, did you have a question?
My question was super similar to Rishi's. I think it was already answered. I was just wondering like what adding this partnership would entail, but thank you, Megan.
And then Cameron.
Cameron Fisher. Yeah, I think I'm kind of like with Danny and Rishi. I'm confused as to why we call out one specific group when Megan's just explained that there's an open door to multiple partners throughout the region. I suppose it's to Anne and Don with the motion. Why one particular group?
Well, they have 52 on page 52. There's a long list of partners, and those partners do include K4C and one other department from King County, but didn't have this department. And this is a really good resource as well. So I thought it would be good to add that, but that amendment got voted down or didn't get seconded. So this was another amendment that I had is very specific. And at the end of the lines on the 1.3 to 1.3, there's a category for partners. And I just thought in this area, this is a specific place where those partners could be added. And then if they want to add it to page 52, they can. Or I could redo that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Tom, sorry, I'd missed you before. Your comment.
Yeah, this is Tom Anderson. Yeah, I didn't read these lists as being this is the exclusive list that we're going to partner with and no one else. So I mean, I like your idea, Anne. Conceptually, sure, that's a good organization to add, but I don't feel it's necessary to add. That it will happen if it's a good thing. It'll happen anyway. But that's why I wasn't piping up on this before. It didn't seem necessary to add yet another one in there. It's just it's an example. The list is a starting point, just a starting point. Okay, thank you.
The reason I would say add it in is because it helps people, it helps guide people. So this is a guide for people, and that helps people remember, oh yeah, there's that great resource that we can use and that they might not think about. And so that, and before I have mentioned this before, like with the King County 30-year forest plan, and that didn't get added. So I just thought I would try to make the amendment.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments. Give that one more second. All right, Jean, could you take us through a vote on Dawn's amendment to Anne's amendment?
Sure. So starting with Danny Madden.
Yay.
Dominic Williams,
Yay.
Rishi Hazra,
Yay.
Cameron Fisher,
Yay.
Laura Labico,
Okay, did you get that?
I'm sorry, Laura, can you say again?
Nay.
Thank you. Dan Hintz
Yay.
and Newcomb,
Yay.
Jamie Finch,
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
The amendment passes 8-1.
Thank you, Gene. And so now we are back to Ann's amendment which has now been amended with the language that Don provided in his amendment. So any comments or questions on that amendment? Seeing none, Gene, could you take us through a vote on the amendment?
Yes. Danny Madden,
Yay.
Dominic Williams,
Yay.
Rishi Hazra,
Yay.
Cameron Fisher,
Yay.
Laura Labico,
Nay.
Dan Hintz,
Yay.
and Newcomb,
Yay.
Jamie Finch,
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
Motion passes 8-1.
Thank you, Gene. And so now we are back to the motion that I made prior to Ann's amendment, which would, just as a reminder, was the motion to recommend the Icap with the recommended changes. Any comments on that motion, comments or questions? Right. I think then, Gene, can you take us through a vote on that motion?
Yes, starting with Danny Madden,
Yay.
Dominic Williams,
Yay.
Rishi Hazra,
Yay.
Cameron Fisher,
Yay.
Laura Labico,
Yay.
Dan Hintz,
Yay.
and Newcomb,
Yay.
Jamie Finch,
Yay.
Tom Anderson.
Yay.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, Gene, and thank you, Megan, for all the work that went into this. I think with that, we should probably do a time check as we are at time and we have a whole nother agenda item of the Stormwater Master Plan. So wanted to get a sense for, first of all, maybe it would be helpful from, are they still on the call? I'm not seeing.
This is Megan. So they are all still on the call. Jean would have the capability to bring them up to be panelists.
Okay.
There
I
he
was
goes.
hoping to
Okay.
get commentary from Gary and I think it was Matt on what time extension would be required and then whether they're able to do that. And then secondarily, I'll ask the board if there's anyone that has objections to based on what they say. So Gary or Matt, what
Hi, everybody.
say you?
This is Gary. We could make anything work here for you, really very flexible. I could move through this since you had the staff report rather quickly and attempt to get it done within a half an hour, including questions. I can move very fast. But if you really feel you want more time to hear this and have a longer discussion, we could bump it to next month, and we would just go to council before coming to you, which isn't the best, but I could totally live with that. So whatever you guys want, I'm willing to do.
Thank you, Gary. I think it might be, I don't know the exact mechanics of this, but it might be good to do a poll of which we would prefer. And actually now, first, before I do that, are there any, I think if there's any objections to us continuing, that would be a non-starter and we need to push out. So does anyone on the board have any objection? Don, you had a question?
Yeah, Gary, I want to give you guys your due credit on this. So I want you guys to have time to walk us through this and answer questions and hear comments. When does it go to council? Is it before or after our next board meeting?
Good question, Don. Yeah, we go to council on this month on the 20, right before Thanksgiving, Tuesday for a study session. We're going to Parks Board next week, EBC. I'm sending a staff report next week, and then Planning and Policy in December. So again, if it's fine by me, because we'll have a few board comments before the city council, so it's not life or death.
And this is informational only. Council's not making any decisions on the master plan at this point.
That's correct, Donna. Just seeking exactly what from you folks here. We're just really wanting feedback, actually, on some of the things that Connie talked about today early on, and we'll be coming back again in February or March with some more details on our actions. So this is going to be around a while yet.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Gary and Don. Okay, so we have a comment from Laura that she needs to sign off. I think given all of that information, and I think we actually have a pretty light agenda for our December meeting, we might need to just push this off. Appreciate your flexibility, Gary and Matt, to a meeting in December. So appreciate the flexibility.
Certainly, I just would add, Jamie, that if anybody, if they read through the staff report and have questions now in preparation for next meeting, please feel free to send those along. Again, don't feel obliged, but you're more than welcome to, and I can respond back to Jamie for you.
Great, thanks, Gary and Matt, and appreciate you sticking around. So next, I believe, the next agenda item is reports, which I don't know, Jean, do you have any reports?
Hi, this is Gene again. Just quick update on the sustainability manager hiring. So an offer was made to a candidate, and I believe that the candidate will be starting in the beginning of December. So looking forward to that. And then in terms of the next board meeting, it was tentatively agenda-wise going to be just the annual report to the city council in terms of the board kind of working through that in drafting a report. But now it looks like we'll be adding the storm and surface water master plan to the agenda. So that'll be the December 8 meeting. Should have 2 items on the agenda now, but that concludes the reports.
I did just have one additional item related to the community task force, just to provide an update on that project, which our primary focus is on, one, identifying the buckets of projects, so looking at transportation, parks, and facilities and utilities, looking at those buckets for priorities, and then evaluating other revenue sources that might help us fund. We reviewed that capital improvement plan, the CIP. A lot of those needs were not funded. And so one of the things that this task force is also looking at is looking at a recommendation on should we be evaluating another revenue source? And that recommendation will go to the mayor. So just a quick update on where that stands. We've done some initial prioritization of buckets, and there's a little bit of differences between some different groups within the task force, but by far the number one priority of buckets was the transportation bucket. That's not a set in stone thing by any means, but that was just what came out of our most recent meeting. So we'll have more information in the coming weeks and months, but that was based on a bunch of criteria that we set for what we thought the most important bucket to focus on would be, or the most timely bucket to focus on to be. That was the bucket that was identified. And happy if anyone has questions, I can provide a lot more detail. Don't want to keep everyone longer than we need to, but I'll have more information as we get a little further through the process. But that was a quick update on that. And then I think, unless anyone else has any other business, which this is your chance. Not hearing any, then I move that we adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone.